How's it going, you guys, and welcome to Morning Cup. Now here's what I want to get into today. I want to get into space and the ethics of space and, well, what we're doing to the space around us. Now the earth as we know it has been revolutionary for humanity, for human beings, for human species as a whole. But what we don't understand as humanity, as human beings, of course, is the fact that there is a lot more to it. There's a lot more to comprehend than just what our surface or our planet has to offer. And when we look at the bigger picture of things, we understand the fact that there is a lot more to the equations than we can comprehend as of now based on our understandings and our limitations. You see, technology can only get us so far, and with the technological advancements being what they are today, there is a lot more questions than we have answers. And when it comes to space, it is ever more prevalent that as we technologically advance, we are going to be gaining more knowledge. And as we gain more knowledge, our understanding and our contemplation of things drastically change. From way back in the day when people thought that the earth was the epicenter of the universe and everything has revolved around us, to understanding now that we are merely in a dark part of the universe wherein galaxies that might be so much more prevalent than us cannot even notice us because we're just in a dark, unlit part of the universe. You see, when it comes to the bigger picture of things, there's always more than we can comprehend because there are limitations to our potentials. And those limitations to our potentials by no means are evident to the fact that we aren't able or capable of harnessing what the universe has to offer. But the sheer fact that our comprehension is still developing. And that is just testament to time itself. As time progresses and as technological advancements progress and as science progresses as a whole, we are going to be making leaps and bounds that we haven't even imagined yet, that science fiction movies haven't even imagined yet. You see, the epitome of science fiction has always been far-fetched. It's always been a fact that, oh, that is just in movies, that can never happen in reality. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Because today we are in a time and a place wherein people thought that we could never have an internet access. We could never be connected to the rest of the world by a whim of a button on our phones. We could never have touch screens. We could never have, Wi-Fi. We could never have video calling. We could never have access to all of the information of the world at our fingertips. And today we live in a world where all of that's regular. And children born in today's world grow up to this new norm. This new normal, as you will, is going to drastically change as time progresses. And that is what we're going to be considering when we look at ourselves back in 50 years. When we look back at the year 2021, in the year 2100, we will look at us as a technological species that didn't know anything. That our comprehension was so little and so minuscule that we lacked the ability to see the bigger picture. You see, that we were so confined and constructed in the whole idea of trying to manifest the earth into our own ideal habitat that we forgot that there are so many more habitats out there that we could have embraced and made our own. That one little thing that could have hit the earth and caused a mass extinction event like so which the dinosaurs went through could have just as well ended humanity as a whole as well. And what we understand today is the fact that in 100 years from now, there's going to be a lot more for humanity as a whole to understand, to embrace, to cherish than we have right now. But another thing that happens as soon as we look at the bigger picture of things is the fact that our initial understanding of things has its own limitations. And the biggest flaw of them all is the fact that there is something known as our immediate space. You see, every time there's a new spacecraft launched into space, be it a satellite, be it a Voyager mission, be it anything, be it a space probe, it's always launched in one of two orbits. If it is launched around the Earth, that is. One is LEO, that is low Earth orbit, and the other is HEO, high Earth orbit. Now these two orbits are essentially the dictating factor of what your satellite is capable of. If your satellite is a low Earth orbit satellite, that means that it's basically your satellite for GPS, your satellite for your ATM transactions, your satellite for satellite phones and communications arrays. What we also understand thereby is the fact that there is more to our contemplation of high Earth and low Earth orbits than we can comprehend in one single understanding of the issue. You see, every time there's a new satellite launched into space, there is a threat that there will be space debris that's going to be colliding into these said satellites and thereby resulting in drastic events. Even the ISS has been under constant threat with, well, debris from space. And if you're launching a satellite into low Earth orbit or high Earth orbit, it's just subjected to what you're talking about when you're launching the new satellite. If you're talking about GPS, if you're talking about transactions from your ATM, if you're talking about mere communication satellites that are for the regular people, it's all low Earth orbit. When you're talking about higher intelligence-based operations, military-based operations, the Hubble Space Telescope, that's all high Earth orbit. But this discrepancy in orbits does not ascertain to the fact that there is more of a bigger picture that needs to be painted when we're talking about space debris. Space debris is something that can be generated on numerous accords. Space debris can merely be a piece of bolt or a huge piece of discontinued satellite that has lost its communications and is just floating around space. But we also understand the fact that there is upwards of 6,000 satellites in space right now, 60% of which are debris, 40% of which are active payloads. If this 60% is met with anywhere near the 40% discrepancy of what is actually useful to the Earth today, we are going to be looking at a scale that is going to be drastic in terms of what the outfall of this is going to be. If all of the space debris that's out there connects with all of the active payloads, we're going to be in a blackout scenario. And that is going to be more devastating today because more than half of the world is dependent on technology for its everyday regular functioning. We're talking about finances to information sectors to communication sectors to every single thing that you and I are used to on a regular basis today in the 21st century. If we go on a complete blackout in terms of our satellites collapsing because of space debris, it's all done for. The other bigger picture that comes into play is the fact that there have been numerous organizations that are venturing into launching microsatellites. Now, numerous nations have also launched microsatellites, but bigger organizations that are looking at things on a bigger scale are launching microsatellites as well, looking at Starlink from SpaceX as well as Amazon's new venture. You see, Starlink on a bigger scale is to create a net around the Earth of microsatellites that is going to be able to provide internet access to the remote locations that have been neglected in terms of the information reach. You see, there have been loads of places that are away from the regular cities, loads of places that cannot be hardwired to the internet connection. And these remote locations are exactly the target point for ventures like Starlink as well as Amazon's new venture that is dictating the same exact thing. We saw that even in India, a country that was so backwards in terms of its connectivity problems, with the launch of Reliance Jio, it has reached more people in more remote villages than we can ever comprehend, creating a whole new wave of people that are now having access to the internet. And this access to the internet by no means is limiting their potential. It's only making them more capable and more understanding of what the world has to offer on a whole. What we also understand, in fact, on a bigger scale is that Starlink is doing exactly the same thing but on a global scale. Nations like Africa, continents like Antarctica need internet access, and they're currently dealing with horrible internet access. With missions like Starlink, it's going to be able to give you a remote connectivity in the scenario of a small dish that can then be hooked onto those satellites, and you can get internet access to wherever you might be, whichever corner of the earth you might be. If in the middle of the Amazon basin to the middle of the Sahara desert, you will be able to get connectivity through the internet and do your own research or do whatever you need to do. Tribes that have been neglected in terms of the digital revolution can now finally gain access to the internet and be, well, revolutionized in terms of their understanding and the information that they have been neglected to be delivered. The other most promising thing about all of this is the fact that yes, digitization and the digital revolution is very, very essential. But if we don't show the same enthusiasm as climate change activists are showing right now, if we don't show the same amount of concern that global warming activists are showing, we are going to be in a time and a space wherein the earth might be saved, but everything else around the earth in terms of our immediate space is going to be ruined with just debris. And the further we wait, the bigger this issue gets. And if we don't get behind this issue today, there will be a point wherein it's going to be too late. The ISS is in constant threat, new payloads are in constant threat, and even ventures that are built to strictly observe the rest of the universe like the Hubble telescope is under threat. You see, a lot of these objects might be able to be tracked by the United States Air Force, as we spoke about, as well as NASA. But there are always going to be objects that cannot be tracked, and the smaller these objects get, the harder it is to track these objects from the earth. And that does not by any means diminish their capabilities of causing havoc if they make contact. With that being said, we understand that space is our own in terms of our immediate space at least. There's a lot out there that we might not be ever able to comprehend in terms of our reach. But with our immediate environment, we need to look at the bigger picture by just the earth. If we are showing so much concern about the earth and its capability to harness humanity as a whole, we also need to show concern about the space around our earth. You cannot just clean up one and leave the other. We need to take efforts today, we need to have an outcry today, and we need to spread the word today. Because the worst part about this issue is that there is a lack of understanding, a lack of information. People are just not aware of the fact that the size of this issue is so big that an international union of scientists have gotten behind it and said that we need to start dealing with space debris today, or there will come a point wherein it will be next to impossible to launch a new payload, a new venture, or even new astronauts to space. And if we want to secure our place in the universe, we need to start cleaning up the earth first, then the space around the earth, and only then can we move ahead with our further ventures into deeper space. With that being said, this has been your morning cup. I'll see you tomorrow.